This is 5 on 20 News, where the news is fresh, but the newscasters happen to be fresher, with Sean Madrid
and Leah Mlyn, coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. First, the local headlines.
A former Arizona Democratic Party member claims that she was fired after she tried to stop corruption within the organization. In a lawsuit filed last week, former Democratic Party Executive Director Sheila Healy says that Democratic Chairwoman Alexis Tamarin was steering contracts to her husband and close friend. Campaign finance records show that the Democratic Party paid $124,000 to Saguaro Strategies, which is run by Adam Kinsey, Tamarin's husband. When Healy attempted to raise the issue, she says the chairwoman fired her. Healy is seeking $116,000 in back pay, but says that the party only offered her a $4,000 bonus. Tamarin responded, saying that there is no self-dealing going on and that Healy is seeking retaliation because she was fired. We wouldn't be surprised if the statement was written on Saguaro Strategies' letterhead.
A new law has been proposed in Arizona that would expand a state program that provides vouchers for private and religious schools. Arizona Republican Debbie Lesko introduced the measure. If passed, it will use taxpayer dollars to create a universal voucher program for all 1.1 million students in our state. The vouchers can be used to pay tuition and fees at alternative schools in the state. Previously, the program was only available to students with special needs or students from failing schools, but Lesko's bill would vastly expand the use of vouchers. The bill also requires schools to test students using vouchers and send the results to parents, but private schools will not be required to report the test results to the public. Chris Cotterman, a lobbyist for the Arizona School Boards Association, says that Lesko's law dilutes the state's obligation to fully fund public schools. The vouchers will cost $5,200 per student, and Cotterman says this will be taken from public school funds. But Lesko argues that the figure is still cheaper than the over $9,000 that are spent per student in public schools. Cotterman says that this is an inaccurate figure because some districts have less funding to work with, and the 9,000 figure is simply an average. Cotterman added that Lesko must have taken math at a private school, then dropped the mic.
At a hearing for a 2018 budget, Arizona Senator John McCain is calling for closure of some U.S. military bases to save the Pentagon money. McCain says that the savings could be used for equipment upgrades and for funding troops. His remarks come after Military Times report asserted that the Pentagon could save about $12 billion per year by closing underused and outdated military bases around the country. McCain also says that lawmakers need to be the ones who order the closings rather than using a commission, which he calls a cowardly act. He blames the Budget Control Act of 2011 for causing an underfunded military. The act ordered automatic cuts for the military if Congress couldn't find anywhere to cut the budget. Unsurprisingly, Congress failed, and yet we still maintain the largest funded military in the world by a factor of 3.
The University of Arizona will be involved in a study that seeks to reverse allergies to peanuts and other foods. The university is studying peanut desensitization, a process where children are exposed to tiny bits of peanuts and then slowly develop a tolerance. The process is also known as oral immune therapy. The goal of the university is to gain FDA approval over the process, which they expect to achieve the next couple of years. So far, it looks as though the therapy is reaping positive results. Jonathan Austin is a boy from Tucson who was exposed to oral immune therapy and can now safely eat peanuts. Previously, Austin frequently spent time in the hospital and couldn't be in a room with peanut-related ingredients. To keep his tolerance up, Austin eats a little over 7 grams of peanuts every day, but doctors aren't sure how long he'll have to keep up the habit.
The Tucson Police Department is getting all futuristic on us. TPD will receive a virtual reality training program by Vertra, a Tempe-based VR company that provides realistic training for law enforcement agencies. Simulators will be installed at 7 different Arizona locations, with one at the Southern Arizona Law Enforcement Center in Tucson. The systems will be able to place police cadets in realistic situations to prepare them for what they will encounter in the field. Vertra simulators feature a 360-degree video screen and use real weapons and electric pulses to induce stress in the scenario. Arizona is the first state to offer this type of virtual reality training. The system should be up and running in the next months, but the only game available so far is Donkey Kong.
Tucson's Sun Corridor Incorporated, the region's economic development, said that 250 jobs are coming to Tucson this year. ADP, a global provider of human resource technology, will add 250 jobs in the city, raising their total to 400 jobs in Tucson and almost 2,000 total in Arizona. ADP also announced last November that it would create 1,500 jobs at a new facility in Tempe. The company employs 1,000 veterans as part of its workforce. If you're looking for a job and know a thing or two about human resources, you can check out job openings at adp.com. Now, in national and international news.
Earlier today, President Trump signed an executive order to create an impassable physical barrier on the U.S. border with Mexico. Oh boy, Trump spouted his promise of a border wall over and over again, and now it seems he really wants to follow through on his pea-brained ideas. Bit adieu to those hopeful ideas that Trump's views on the campaign trail were all smoke and mirrors. The 2,000-mile barrier is his attempt at stopping what he calls a crisis on the southern U.S. border. Now, if only he would check the numbers and realize that in reality, there are less people crossing into the U.S. from Mexico now than in previous years. But as we've learned, Trump is not into reading. Here is what Mexican designers Estudio 3.14 imagine the wall will look like based on Trump's assertion that it will be beautiful. The wall will be funded by federal dollars and could take 16 years to build. Estimates say it will cost the government $15 to $25 billion to build, though Trump has said that he guarantees 100% that Mexico will reimburse the U.S. for the wall later. Mexican officials say, no way. Trump's executive order also called for a beef-up of Border Patrol efforts and the hiring of 10,000 additional immigration officers. And the hate keeps coming. Trump also signed an executive action today stripping federal funds for U.S. sanctuary cities. A sanctuary city is not a legal term necessarily, but refers to local policies or practices that protect undocumented immigrants from persecution of federal immigration laws in some way. Tucson has not technically declared itself a sanctuary city, with officials saying instead that Tucson is friendly to immigrants. On Friday, a group of 200 protesters did march to Tucson City Hall to demand that the city council use the designation. We'll be watching this story closely to see who Trump punishes and where Tucson stands in the matter on being a sanctuary city.
And the good ideas keep on coming from the Orange Cheeto. A report by the Congressional Budget Office found that Donald Trump's plans to cut taxes and spend on infrastructure would balloon public debt by an additional $6 trillion over the next 10 years. The report said that Trump will inherit a $559 billion deficit. Because the economy is still growing slowly, the additional tax cuts and spending will send the deficit skyrocketing. Mark Goldwine, policy director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, hopes that the new information will make Trump think twice about his plans. Goldwine is apparently unaware that Donald Trump is unable to think twice about anything. The report found that federal debt would grow from its current $20 trillion to $30 trillion by 2027, with $25 trillion being held by the public. The major drivers of the debt will be health spending for seniors and a rising interest rate. Goldwine said that the debt has nothing to do with military or welfare spending, but rather a rise in major entitlement programs such as Medicare, along with the interest hikes. If the CBO numbers are to be believed, the federal debt will be at its highest level in history. Trump's plans include a promise to cut public taxes, as well as corporate taxes, which Trump says will be lowered to 15% from its current 35%. Remember, folks, in GOP land, debt is only bad if it has to do with helping poor people.
Although Donald Trump may have touted his inaugural ball as being affordable for the peasants, he forgot to mention the whole VIP deal. Yes, it turns out that Donald Trump's balls are unequal, with one being overstuffed and the other being smaller but covered in glitter. The Intercept received an internal document showing that Trump's Liberty Ball featured an exclusive section for the real ballers. The peasants were diverted to a larger and less exclusive Freedom Ball held in a high school gym and catered by KFC. In the documents, the 8,000 Liberty Ball VIP attendees were listed by the amount they donated, then went on to list which organizations they were from or which government agency they represented. The 22,000 attendees of the Freedom Ball were listed as low-level donors. Breitbart Media had advertised the Freedom Ball as focused on working-class people across the country, while the Washington Post also mentioned the low prices. Not only did they neglect to mention the VIP Liberty Ball, but also they forgot to mention the very, very tremendous special VVIP room. That's right, not a joke. There was even a more exclusive room for the highest donors, who had access to the pudgy prez all to themselves. Because of course Donald Trump would have a very, very important person room. Pictures leaked from the Liberty Ball show incoming Energy Secretary Rick Perry was palling around with Caitlyn Jenner in what appears to be District 1 of the Hunger Games. Meanwhile, at the Liberty Ball, the most exciting event was Scott Baio passing out in a bowl of pudding. Trump didn't officially show up to the smaller Liberty Ball, but some attendees did see a doughy figure sneak in and grab a handful of chicken thighs before running off.
One of Donald Trump's choices for a top civil rights law position has some unsavory history. Attorney John Gore has defended laws in the past that weakened voting rights for African Americans. Gore was chosen for Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. Gore has worked to defend Republican redistricting laws in Virginia, South Carolina, New York, and Florida. The redistricting is considered by some to be gerrymandering because the electoral maps were drawn to pack African Americans into a single district. This ends up watering down the African American vote because they're not spread across counties where their votes would be more effective. Also, in Florida and Virginia, Gore fought on behalf of Republicans to defend voter ID laws, which have historically had a negative impact on African American communities.
Yesterday, a bunch of guys in the House of Representatives got together to do guy stuff, like take away women's rights. First up was H.R. 490, which would restore legal protection for unborn children once a pulse is detected. The bill, which was introduced by Iowa Republican Steve King and was co-sponsored by 21 members of the House, including Arizona's Trent Franks, who, frankly, makes us ashamed of being from the state. If passed, abortionists who violate the law could face 5 years in prison. A pulse can be detected as early as 6 weeks into a pregnancy, which is a period of time before many women even know that they're pregnant. Republicans have been trying to get a bill like this passed many times, but have always been blocked. The Ohio House passed a similar bill late last year, but it was later vetoed by Governor John Kasich. But now, with a Republican majority and a douchebag president that supports their broadside against women, they could finally succeed. But at least the GOP has a plan to take care of all these precious lives once they're born into poverty. Oh wait, no they don't. This bill is based on junk science claiming that an unborn baby is technically alive once it has a pulse. But there is a broad disagreement in the scientific community and among philosophers about when life actually begins.
Did you think House Republicans were done with abortion? Not even close. Because then we would be forgetting H.R. 7, also passed yesterday in a 238 to 183 vote. H.R. 7 would cut taxpayer funding to insurance plans that cover abortion procedures. Guess what party those 238 votes came from? But unlike the other bill, H.R. 7 accomplishes two purposes. It insults women, and it's a massive waste of time. Because it's already illegal for taxpayer money to be used for abortion under the Hyde Amendment. So the bill is like passing a bill making murder illegal. But H.R. 7 does go a little farther than the Hyde Amendment because it would also ban abortion coverage offered under plans associated with the Affordable Care Act. But as we know, the Affordable Care Act will be gone in a few weeks, so that will also be pointless. Thanks for wasting our time, GOP. We'll see you next week when you start requiring chastity belts.
Intended consequences can be a beautiful thing, especially when they backfire on Donald Trump. Trump's hiring freeze of federal workers could mean that not enough personnel will be available to handle Trump's plans to deport 3 million immigrants from the country. As it stands, the nation's 58 immigration courts already have a backlog of 530,000 cases, the highest number on record. The average case now takes almost 2 years to be processed and sometimes can take as much as 6 years. 150 judges would need to be brought on board in order for the backlog to be under control by 2023. According to Trump's executive order, the federal government cannot add any public workers unless it has to do with the military or national security. This means that Trump could add Border Patrol and ICE members since this would fall under national security. However, once the undocumented immigrants are caught, this would add to the already massive backlog in the immigration court systems. Unfortunately, this means that those caught will likely languish in detention facilities until their court date arrives, which could be a decade at this point. Luckily, we have terrific private prisons that would love to do their patriotic duty and lock these people up. See, Trump is creating jobs.
An email was sent out to employees of the Department of Agriculture banning scientists from sharing results of taxpayer-funded research. The email said that the order had not been made public. The ban includes everything from scientific paper summaries to tweets by the USDA. Scientists are still able to submit findings to peer-reviewed journals, but are unable to talk to the public about the research without permission from the agency. But today, Badlands National Park lived up to its name and tweeted out a series of scientific facts about climate change following the memo. But hours later, the tweets had been removed. The USDA spoke on the issue, saying that the memo was misguided and that they would seek further guidance on the policy. This isn't the first time that a gag order has been imposed on U.S. environmental agencies. In 2010, scientists were barred from talking about the Deepwater oil spill. However, previous bans have been limited to single issues, and this is the first time that an agency-wide ban has been imposed.
6 journalists who were arrested during the protests at Donald Trump's inauguration last Friday are being charged with felonies and could face up to 10 years in prison. Evan Engel of the website Vocative, along with Alex Rubinstein of RT America and Miguel Cantu of Truth Out, were charged under Washington, D.C. laws against rioting. In addition to jail time, if convicted, the 3 men could be fined up to $25,000. 3 additional independent journalists were also arrested on Friday as part of the mass arrests at Trump's inauguration. More than 200 people were arrested on Friday after Black Bloc anarchist groups vandalized property. 6 police officers suffered minor injuries in the melee. RT America released a statement that Rubinstein was arrested, and even though he showed his press credentials to the police. Vocative also released an angry statement saying that they will vigorously contest the unfounded and outrageous charge. The arrest record for both journalists was vague, only stating that numerous individuals were arrested. Since our new president has shown that he isn't too into math, let's break this down. 6 journalists were arrested out of 230, which means that almost 3% of the total arrests were journalists. Is this making you nervous yet? This was Sean Madrid
and Leah Mlyn for 5 on 20 News. Next up, Sophie Gibson Rush tells us what's what with local music this week.
This is Alex Cack with 5 on 20 News. We're sitting down today with Dustin Williams, our brand new superintendent of schools for Pima County. Dustin, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
I'm glad to have you on the show. So let's tell our viewers a little bit about you. What's your background? What brought you here?
Born and raised Tucson native, and graduated from the University of Arizona. Became a teacher. Then I became an administrator, so I've been a highly qualified teacher and administrator for 9 years. And really what drew me to the position was just watching my fellow colleagues leave in droves. And after a while, I could no longer sit on the sidelines and started to kind of look at the position and investigate it a bit and took a run for it and campaigned for two years and did it really strong and
won.
And it was successful.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you very much.
I know you had a primary race and then you had a general election, so yeah. You've come a long way to get here. Now that you're here, what are the plans? What's first thing on the agenda for the Dustin Williams administration?
So we've done a couple of neat things. The first thing is we're calling it a Superintendent School-Wide Tour, and basically just getting into as many schools as possible to really tell the teachers how proud we are of them and how thankful we are of how much work they put in each day in the classroom, and really to be visible and to educate people about this position, because a lot of people don't really know about the Pima County School Superintendent.
No, that's a real thing that people are really confused about, kind of about how education is actually administrated. And maybe you could explain a little bit about what the position you've been elected to does.
Sure. So a lot of times in the campaign, I would tell people I was running for the Pima County School Superintendent, and they'd say, "Oh, you're taking over HT's position, or Patrick Nelson, or one of the superintendents of the school." But it's quite opposite. What our office does is 3 main functions. We manage and oversee roughly $1 billion, and we take all the money from the state through taxes or however you want to look at it, comes down to Pima County, and we allocate that money to the school districts. We also do all the bonds and all the overrides for when schools participate in that. And that's the big administrative part of our office. The second thing that we do is professional development. And that's teachings for the teachers or the staff. And we do that for all schools. So that could be private schools, traditional public and public charter, and homeschools, rurals, anything that you want to call, any service that they may need, we come out there and provide that service at the best possible cost for that education place.
See, and that's something I didn't even know. I wasn't aware of it myself, that you guys were involved in aiding charter schools or things like that.
Right.
And I feel like the charter school thing's interesting because we've seen a real uptick of that in Arizona, especially. What are your thoughts on charter schools?
Charter schools are fantastic. It gives it, it's school choice, and everything is about choice. The most important thing for a family out there is what is the best fit for the child. And if it is a charter school or a private school, and it's going to be successful for that child to get the best education possible and have the best engagement for that child, then that's the choice that you got to make. One thing that we really just want to be careful with, and the concern that is out there, is equality. So a lot of the times, if you look at the numbers, sometimes our public schools right now are too heavy on ELL students, which are English language learners, or students with needs, special education. And there sometimes isn't an equal balance there. And so we want to make sure that charter schools have that accountability and everybody shares a piece of the pie and allows all students to get the best education that they possibly can.
So, with that said, what's your biggest goal for your first year in office? What is it that you're looking, December of this year, you're looking back, but right before holiday break, what are you hoping that you've accomplished at the end of this year?
At the end of this year, what I'd like people to do is say, we know who the Pima County School Superintendent is, and not just my name, Dustin Williams, but the office, and that we become the go-to place. So we bring all the organizations that benefit schools, and we also get as much opportunity that we possibly can lend a hand for all these institutions. And so in a year from now, I hope people say, hey, if you want to get something done, or if you have an opportunity for education, go to the Pima County School Superintendent's office, and they're going to be able to facilitate the goal.
And I mean, on that note, I mean, as far as the community coming in, what in your mind is the most important thing the community could do to support our schools?
Right now, it's advocacy. It's making sure that they really understand which legislators are really backing education and which legislators are going to help get dollars in the classroom. Right now, the biggest problem that we have out there is teacher shortage. And so we need people to be educated about the ballots, the propositions, which bills are getting passed and what are not getting passed, and lending that hand, volunteering wherever they can volunteer, and coming up with an idea, and then meeting with the likes of myself in our office, and then making things and ideas turn into action, something tangible that everyone can go back and have their hand on it, and they touched it and grasped it.
And so it sounds like, I mean, this is really something where you know, parents need to be involved, and they said they really need to pay attention to where, you know, their votes are going and where their money's going with the people that they voted for.
You're absolutely right. It's just, you know, the parents' involvement. It's a complete balance in the whole system for a child to be successful. We need that great home structure. The students got to be hopefully, you know, getting fed, doing their homework, and disciplining their children, and then working with the school and communicating with the teacher, and really, really making sure that we have every opportunity that's available for a child to be successful.
Well, and that reminds me of something I wanted to discuss. You know, you've had a long career in education, so you've seen it from kind of the ground up, I feel like. What to you seems to be the biggest roadblock almost in making sure that our kids have the best education possible? I mean, what's the biggest issue that we can resolve?
It's absolutely the funding for teachers. Starting salary for a teacher's average is about $31,000 a year. Poverty level is $33,000 a year. So the problem that we're finding out right now is we're losing teachers. 25% of all the classrooms actually don't have a warm body in the classroom.
Are they, is there a robot, a zombie? What do we replace them with?
Literally, kids get shifted to different classes. You have teachers that have to take a 6/5 contract, which means if they teach 5 classes and they have a planning and prep period, they got to go over and do that class. And that's in the first month. After that first month is over, 50% of our schools don't have adequately certified teachers in those classrooms. So the problem is right now, we are losing our educators to other states. And I understand that a lot of times people say that teachers go into the profession not to get rich. Well, the problem is to make a means to have a family and be successful, you can't be in poverty to go teach. Also coming out of school, what the debt is. I mean, think about, there's just so many things that really hinder this profession right now, and we really, really, really got to make sure we take some steps to get these teachers funded at the end of the day and get the schools funded.
Huge difference between, being rich and, just being hungry.
Correct.
I mean, we're talking about this. I mean, that's barely above the minimum wage.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're kind of on a mission to protect our teachers.
Really, it is. At the end of the day, obviously, the office has a responsibility to 155,000 kids, and great teaching is what's going to make everything more successful in the long run. And someone's got to advocate for those teachers and those kids, and that's going to be me.
Well, it sounds like that's one thing that you and I have discussed outside of this as well, is that since in the short time you've been the superintendent, I know you've been working on some projects to kind of, franchise some of these students who probably are having issues with, being overcrowded in classrooms. I know there was a video series that we discussed one time.
Sure.
Is that something that you guys are getting ready to launch, or?
Right now we're going to launch an art program where students can submit some art. So we're looking more of like culture and art and architecture, that sort of. We haven't gotten into any of the video ideas yet. We might look into that, but we thought we'd start out with a really cool art show that we're doing. You can go to our website or Facebook, just Office of the Pima County School Superintendent, or schools.pima.gov, and you can find us anywhere on the internet. And we just thought this would be good because we could get all participants from schools, and it would be real easy with just some sort of art situation there.
And what days is that art show going to happen if parents or community members wanted to come and view it?
The deadline is going to be to submit the end of February, and then it's going to be biannual. So I think they have until at least May, somewhere in there. I'd have to look again. We just literally launched it last week, and the details are just posted now. My communications director and constituents director just got that up.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for Dustin Williams for stopping in. That's the biannual student art show put on by the Pima County Superintendent of Schools office. Thank you again, Dustin.
Thank you for having me.
Here to speak sweetly, lovingly, locally about music. Life continues post-Women's March. We go to work and eat lunch and blow our noses because we're post-feminist now, right? Wrong. The march has passed, but the anger isn't going anywhere. If you tuned in last week, you know that I've been particularly interested in protest music and why protesting is cool, but protest music usually isn't. The Women's March this weekend is a good reason to look at it from a different angle and reassess. Here's a Wikipedia definition for you. Riot Girl is an underground feminist punk movement that originated in the early 1990s. It combines feminist politics, punk style, and music. Basically, it's a musical movement in which women express themselves in the same way men have been doing for the past several hundred years. In addition to a music scene and genre, Riot Girl is a subculture involving a DIY ethic, zines, art, and political action and activism. The movement takes about as many forms as there are participants, but the idea is the same. Riot Girl is an opportunity for self-expression and self-determination for women using simple tools like pen, paper, and power chords. Bands like Bikini Kill and Bratmobile, who originated the movement, gave rise to later bands like Slater-Kenny and Le Tigre. And over here, in a glittering subcategory, are the Spice Girls, who represent the plastic commercialization of Riot Girl. 90s grunge and punk has made a resurgence in the last few years for several reasons. Our current social climate demands a loud, DIY approach to political art. Another reason is this. Because of the same climate, we have strong social nostalgia. In this divided country, we nostalgically long for a sense of authentic community. So nostalgia wins out over practical engagement in politics sometimes. Sarah Doer, a musician and professor and instructor at Portland's Rock and Roll Camp for Girls, said about Neo Riot Girl, among people who grew up with the internet, people who are presented with a gajillion cultural options, when they find one that feels really cool and authentic to them, like Riot Girl is to some people, they glom onto it. Now there are all these people coming out of Rock and Roll Camp for Girls who are like, look at my zine. And I'm like, why are you making a zine? You have the internet. We cannot let Riot Girl live in the world of nostalgia and academia. That's not where it belongs. All art movements look backwards, of course, but the question is, what do we add on? The Women's March this weekend represented an extremely practical engagement in politics and social responsibility. We live in a new era with new tools, so let's update Riot Girl. In Tucson, in recent years, there have been several attempts at potent feminist music. Caterwaul successfully unified the deeply personal and the political in their performances and their release, 15 Forever. Brittany Catter is an ardent feminist, but seeing her perform is an experience that goes way beyond political ideology and into the realm of the heart and soul. Check out Brittany and Jeff's interviews and coverage of the Women's March on Creative Tucson 5 on 20 channel. This year, Fox Bodies burst onto the scene, highlighting born performer Bella Vanek. Fox Bodies brings the revolution you can dance to, or thrash to. Fox Bodies has something to say, and they're ambitious, which is an elixir for success. I urge Tucson women to be inspired by our local Riot Girls and get involved, learn some chords, write some lyrics and that ring true, and start a band. But think of what has changed since the early 90s. We have the internet, for one. We have the ability to use our voice to reach millions and millions of people. Consider the relationship between music, politics, and power, and the tools you have at your disposal. Our predecessors of the 90s made zines and punk music. What do we do? And speaking of updated zines, Hocus Pocus is throwing a 1-year anniversary show this Saturday at 191 Tool. Hocus Pocus is a local record label specializing in lathe-cut playable zines. Though Hocus Pocus looks back, they also look forward, using new innovations and combinations to bring art to our community. The lineup at the show includes Headlock, Acorn, Beacorn, Jivin' Scientists, Lasso, and Otherly Love. I'm also feeling very thankful recently for the Flycatcher. It's a wonderful venue with wonderfully talented sound engineers and shows that are often free. This is an incubator for Tucson's local music scene. Thanks, Flycatcher. Tomorrow is Toma, Rival Shapes, and Miss Abysmal. Saturday is The Darts, Surf, Architecture, and Belinda Esquer. Sunday is Switch Effect, M. Crane, and Saving Kings. And Monday is Giantology, Jeff Lounsbury, and AZ77. Pick any one show at Flycatcher, and you'll see at least 2 hard-working local bands for free. As always, Tucson, to thine own self be true. I'll see you here next week, same time, same place. Here is Fox Bodies at Think Tank. Check it out.